Um, I'll just talk a bit about why am I doing a doctorate in education. So the sort of beginnings of my study were really about my effective engagement with the policy architecture of the UK doctorate, and in particular the change in the Research Council's funding of postgraduate research. And this was later described as the most significant trend shaping postgraduate research provision at UK universities. So in some ways, I come into working on supporting doctoral researchers, and I took a look and went, is the doctorate in crisis? Now, as we heard from Rosemary yesterday, at just about every point in time, people have come in and gone, is the doctorate in crisis, for different reasons. So maybe my reaction wasn't unusual. But it was influenced by the discourse of neoliberalism. And this is one of the starting points for my study, that there is a dominant discourse that's transcended the traditional power of the state, the power of the nation state, and is leaving a state under the supervision of the market rather than a market supervised by the state. And if anybody notices that's from Foucault, they get a bonus point, because a lot of it is exploring some of Foucault's ideas about how the market is functioning, which he had in his The Birth of Biopolitics lectures. So the starting point of my study is that in the UK, neoliberalism as a worldview has sunk deep into the roots of everyday life, almost to the point that it is not visible. And some of my early influence in terms of looking at my studies was from Stephen Ball, and I was very interested in this profound impact on the relationships between people in the public domain, the sense that it reshapes the sense of purpose and notions of excellence and good practice. And this is what I will go and talk about, some of the practice. However, you need to define neoliberalism in some way. I'm drawing on some of the work of Brown in theorising neoliberalism, so where it talks about all conduct being about economic conduct. So why do we do this? We do this because there's some sort of financial return to us. The market is the dominant idea, so actually in deciding what we should do with our lives, it is should you have 3 kids, a puppy, 2 cats and a guinea pig? No, you're completely mad, because that's not economically viable. So unfortunately I have that situation. So I'm not neoliberally aligned in my personal life. But it's also suggesting that it's become a sort of normative, that actually people just think that way. So some of it is goes almost invisibly, and people aren't reflecting on how what they're doing and why they're doing it and what the drivers are. And if that's the case, if there's not that reflexivity or challenge in the system, then you can see a corrosion of democracy. So I think probably the piece I like most out of Wendy Brown's research is this sense of neoliberalism being termite-like rather than lion-like. So it's in there making little holes in the structure rather than being obvious and roaring at you. So taking that theory and then moving it down a level, and I have to acknowledge slides from fantastic colleagues, one of whom may be my supervisor, and this just gives a sort of a sense of the impact on higher education. What has this discourse done to higher education in the UK. It's moved from a sense of scholarship being the aim to a sense of what does that scholarship deliver? What businesses can be set up from your research? What income can be generated? How can this knowledge be mobilized to change things? So there's less of it is about the intellectual endeavour as it is, and more of it is about completing the work so that it can get out to the market. So I think that just gives a flavour of. I won't go more into that now because I'm conscious of time, because I want to move down to what I'm actually doing. So I'm really interested in the discourse of neoliberalism and how it's going through higher education. So it's a dominant view that is affecting the whole of the UK, but it's also then affecting higher education, and then it moves through the different layers of the bureaucracy and government and into the university itself. Now I've chosen a waterfall, and I've chosen that because it's quite a powerful discourse. But I've actually chosen this particular waterfall because it's a messy waterfall. It's not a clear waterfall, and if you see, there's quite a lot of little rocks that are sticking up where the water can actually bounce up and off as the discourse comes across different elements. So there's a sense of that even within the discourse there can be some contradictions. But essentially, there's a wonderful book which Professor Pryor was involved in writing on methodology. So I recommended that you take it back to Japan, and it says that discourses are all-encompassing. Discourses are powerful, encompassing not just the language that is used to constitute knowledge about a particular topic, but also the practices that are associated with it. So I'm taking this discourse and I'm looking at the influences on policies and practice, and also then what universities themselves have done. And as my focus became clearer and clearer, I'm actually focused in on doctoral schools and graduate schools in the UK higher education sector. So these have started really to emerge about 7 years ago. A lot of institutions started to suddenly set up doctoral schools and graduate schools. And a lot of the reason for this was a reaction to changes in the sort of policy of the government in how they were funding doctoral students, the emergence of doctoral training centres and partnerships. And it led to universities creating these new structures. So there's something about the creative power of discourses, and again you can see a link back to Foucault there. And they started to point not academics to be associated with them, but professional services managers to manage these new entities. And my interest is in looking at these, what I've grouped together as graduate school managers, although they can be doctoral college managers. There's a whole variety of titles. Looking at these, interviewing these managers and finding out what their experience is of the impact of neoliberalism. And those are the sort of research questions I'm looking at. What are the competing discourses graduate school managers experience? How the macro level policy changes experienced at the micro level? What's happening to their identity? Are they losing or gaining from this system, and also just trying to get a bit of representation from them about where they see things going. But why on earth would anybody be interested in such a study, I hear you ask? I think it makes a new contribution to knowledge, partly because the professional services, despite now there being more professional services staff employed in UK higher education than there are academics, the group that's not researched is this professional services staff. So partly it's interesting to have an explore of this under-research group. The dominant research is done about the faculty and the students. And as there are challenges to the identity of faculty, these also reflect how the university structured their professional support. But also because it is quite a time of there's some concern about new managerialism and university managers. And there's a nice quote from Marina Warner: Chinese communist enforcers, obedience to ideological principles that they haven't interrogated, and a suggestion that the chain of command leads to administrators and academics being subjected to managers. So there's a real sense that there is from out in the population that there is a power dynamic going on. So something is happening within the universities at this time. So it's interesting to look at some of those dynamics. So how am I doing it? Well, it's a small scale qualitative study, so I've got 8 individual semi-structured interviews which I've completed. I am tackling a very interesting insider researcher element, because I am in fact one of those graduate school managers, and that puts in a lot of problematics and will make a big part of my methodology chapter as well. I think I'll just highlight one of the problematics in terms of interviewing. And although I left this interview at the time slightly concerned about what had happened, it was only in reading the transcript that it sort of became obvious. So these are all questions just from one interview. Is it okay? I'm not sure I've given you what you wanted there. Is that the kind of thing you wanted? Is that the kind of thing you're after? Is that what you're after? I'm not sure I've answered that right. That's not very clear, is it? So something Maggie McClure spoke of the wonder of data and things jumping out of your transcripts or your research data. And it's very clear that here there was something going on in the interview. Whether it's a question of something about the personal relationships, or even whether it's something about the expectations, or is it that they're just desperate to provide the right answer because they're trying to perform the interview. They're trying to perform and reflect what they should, or what their supervisor might expect them to say. And am I suddenly becoming some sort of manager or auditor and making sure that they're saying the right thing? So, I mean, other things I do need to be very aware that I open saying, oh, I think this neoliberalism is a dominant discourse. What happens when I find other discourses? and being open to that. And I did also, I've got to beware to control my facial expressions. Because there was one moment in an interview where they looked up and said, "You're looking worried, Paul." And it was at that moment in the interview where you go, "I'm not sure I can cope with hearing much more about the structure of your organisation. And how do I get this interview back onto the research questions I was hoping to do?" But unfortunately, you've not got to reflect that. So I think being an early career researcher, you do learn through the process as well. But I think as well as being an insider researcher, it goes one step further, and I'm possibly an implicated researcher. Because I am in competition in some ways with these fellow graduate school managers. I'm also in cahoots with them, because I might be partnering with them to secure research funding. And whatever else, it's basically a very intensely political climate. So how do I address some of that? And when the final thesis comes, I'm sure that will be addressed really well, but I haven't got all the answers on that one yet. Initial points of interest, you can see how brave I am. I haven't put findings. These are just points of interest because I'm at the start of a condensation process. That's something somebody used when they're over the weekend when they're presenting their research. And I thought, ooh, that sounds odd. But I'm trying to filter through points. Some of the initial points, though, a sense of the shared identity. So I've got a really interesting challenge on pronouns, which I'm trying to work through. The sense of everything being "we did this" or "we did that," and how do I adjust that? There's some evidence in the interviews about there being a limited distinction between the roles, that these two roles always speak with one voice. And there's a few quotes there, but there's also a sense within that of precarity of that relationship. What happens when the academic director changes? Is this graduate school a fad? Is it, where do I go next? So there's a sort of, what is it that I'm doing? I think there's this links to some interesting current research about the idea that the all-round academic roles are disappearing to be replaced by para-academics in a silent revolution. So there's a question about, well, are these graduate school managers doing a bit of para-academic work? And is the sphere between academic and professional services becoming closer? There's some initial interest about the neoliberal agents and whether they are performing, looking in terms of their own economic advantage. I wanted to get to that particular grade before hitting 30, but were you actually interested in supporting doctoral students? Were you interested in supporting faculty? Or is this just that you want to do that job? I think and then interesting in what role they play. I think we take what the QAA tells us we've got to do and we try and make it more palatable. So there's a sense there that the individuals becoming almost like policy actors in their own right and translating policy and trying to almost a bit of apologetics for neoliberal policy. Another thing is interesting, I found quite interesting, the sense of a great conformity of topics. It seems like a lot of people, when asked what the key issues were, came up with the same things constantly. And very little was said specifically about the key issue within their institution or key issue for their particular students. So I'm querying whether this is part of the speeded up academy. Maybe people don't have time to think about this, so they just accept what is put out at the national conference as those are the issues. And in some ways this links to governmentality in the sense that we are regulating ourselves. Whew, right. So that was a whistle-stop tour of some of the initial points, and I'll wait for questions at the end.
Thank you very much, Paul.